Welcome to this event. My name is Tamara Aberle. I am the program and membership lead here at the British German Association. If you're joining us tonight for the first time and would like to know more about what we do, please have a look on our website, britishgermanassociation.org. Before we start, just a very brief note on technology. If you have any questions during the call, please post them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. You find it kind of towards the middle of your screen. Or alternatively, you can also raise your virtual hand and then someone will allow you to speak and you can just say your question out loud. I am now gonna introduce the speakers. So welcome, Jürgen and Abigail. It's a pleasure to have you here. So Jürgen Krauss was the star of The Great Bake Off in 21. He was much loved in that season. And his love for baking began during his childhood in the Black Forest. He now lives in Brighton. And his first book, German Baking, was published in 23. And it was a great success. And he's now following this up with the German Christmas Cookbook, about which we are going to talking today. And he will be in conversation with Abigail Abesamis Demarest, who is a writer, editor, and former New Yorker based in Panama City Beach in Florida. And her writing has been featured in HuffPost, Insider, Business Insider, Martha Stewart, and others. And she's currently EatingWell's news, trending, and updates editor. Over to you, Abigail.
Thanks, Tamara. Thank you so much for having me and Jürgen. So great to have another opportunity to chat with you. Congratulations on the beautiful new cookbook, which we will be chatting about today. I'll just jump right into the questions. What inspired you to make this German Christmas cookbook, and how is it different from your first cookbook?
Well, Christmas is the big German thing in cooking, and also in gifts, etc. You have got Christmas shops that are open all year round in London, for example, German Christmas shops. So it's a kind of obvious connection. When I did my first book, the publishers were very intent of having a Christmas section, and the success of that probably inspired them to ask for more. And then the recipes I choose for this book, they are not comprehensive. They're very much influenced by my personal history in the Black Forest and with my specific family. My family often don't follow the trodden paths of traditions. So goose at certain time of the year, etc. We didn't do that. We had other ideas about meals, and that is reflected in this book.
That's great. So you mentioned using a lot of family recipes. Can you talk a little bit more about the selection process as far as picking the recipes and, maybe tweaking them a little bit to fit the format of the cookbook?
Yes, there are certain cookbooks my mother used when my brother and I were young and helped her baking. And we were always quite experimental with classical recipes, which created all sorts of shapes that would probably do well in Museum of Modern Art. And we tried out other recipes that used more unconventional ingredients or conventional ingredients in unusual proportions, like biscuits that contained a lot of marzipan. And sometimes they worked very well and sometimes they didn't. I have got great memories of these times just making these things. And to create the pool of recipes for my Christmas book, I dipped into the memory of what I enjoyed making, of what textures I liked, what smells I liked when the dough started forming under my hands.
That's great. You definitely get a sense of that with the photography and all the stories that precede all the recipes in the book. I really enjoyed that aspect, as well as the little anecdotes about certain Christmas memories and the family photos. So it feels like more like a memory book than a cookbook, honestly, in some aspects. But of course, lots of great recipes in there. Talk to me about the process of making the book. How long did it take from start to finish? Was it a shorter development time than the first cookbook?
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about a memory book as opposed to a cookbook. If I was to make a typical German cookbook from the time I grew up, there would be hardly any photos in there, but there there would be 10 recipes on each page, and I don't think they would sell well. I do think that just in my case, because I came out of this TV show, there has to be a personal connection. And I think the personal connection is also a good anchor to dive into an imagination of flavor. If you have a recipe that's just naked on the page, you don't really know where it should be going. So if you have a whole story about it, about mining, or about the darkness and the little brook outside the house, or going to church and the Christmas dinners, etc., you get a whole different sense. Your expectation of what that will be is embedded in more culture, and possibly getting different results, I hope. The process of writing, in my case, it's rather how much time do you get than how much time do you take. And my publishers gave me 3 months to finish the manuscript. So that includes research and everything. And it was challenging because I was working during that time. I took some weeks off, but not the whole time. So it was challenging, but I felt very well prepared for my bake-off experience. Certainly, bake-off is an excellent training in recipe writing. And then once the manuscript was ready, there weren't that many steps. I got involved in just the photo shoots. The manuscript went out to editors. In my case, the editor is an Austrian for the second book, which is brilliant. I didn't have to fight for German orthography in headings. The photographer, Meyers Mensch, she's German. She knew exactly what she was in for, and she loved it, getting to shoot what she really likes as well. The whole team was fantastic. So knowing that I would be working with that team again was just great. We had 7 shooting days, and they were really packed, long days, and fun-filled. There were home economists who cooked most of the dishes for the book, but I did the gingerbread house, I did the little domain, and
I saw. Yeah. They're very cute.
Yeah, thank you.
So you kind of touched upon this. My next question, I was curious about what parts about making the cookbook were the most surprising, challenging, and enjoyable. If you could touch upon that beyond what you've already discussed as far as time constraints and enjoying working with a certain team of photographers and creators.
Yeah, challenging certainly is, if you create a book of classics, how to personalize those classics that they can't be, well, there's always a thing about copyright. You have to personalize your own recipes, but they can't be your own recipes from scratch. So I think of flavor combinations that might be traditional German, but are more something my family invented, like in the Linzer Torte. It's probably not a family invention, but we always use a lot of cocoa powder and kirsch in Linzer Torte, which changes the flavor from the traditional one. Using nuts with the skin on makes a difference in many recipes. Then introducing English flavors is one, certainly, for the beef roulade. And those are really nice with these British-sized fillings. And surprising thing. The most surprising thing I found was when I researched recipes for Springerle, this classic southern German biscuit that's very hard and has nice pictures on it and has these little feet and is essentially eggs, sugar, flour, and aniseed. And I really found a lot of recipes online, and all the recipes had to the dot the same amount of ingredients, or at least the same ratio. So I would say 90% of the recipes I found had the same amount of ingredients, and the one recipe that was differing just had half the ingredients. And that was a surprise. I think That's what I would call a classic. Nobody dares to change it.
Mhm.
So it's not
Classic.
changed in my book.
Sure. I mean, classics are classic for a reason. Yep. So going through your cookbook, there's so many great recipes, stories, family photos. I feel like I not only learned more about German Christmas traditions, but about you. But what do you hope for readers to take away from the book?
Just to enjoy biscuits that don't go stale immediately. Take away a little bit of the atmosphere of my childhood home with the people that were around me at that time. And some of the tech that was around, like, is there a photo of a Fiat 500 with an open bonnet? Something like that. Maybe in the first book. Anyway, atmosphere of a Black Forest town in the 1970s.
It's great. Okay, so diving into the cookbook and some of your favorite recipes. We chatted a little bit before this webinar, and you mentioned that some of your favorites are some of the simple biscuit recipes like the hazelnut macaroons or the cinnamon stars. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about the inspirations for these recipes, if you had any fun anecdotes about where they came from or developing the recipe, as far as and as any tips that you have for readers for success in the kitchen.
Well, the hazelnut macarons are just quite easy to make, and if you want to practice folding in things, folding in is often a daunting technique for new bakers, then I would say these are ideal because you have only two components you need to get together, and the ratio is so that you can't go too wrong. To get to a stage where you beat all the air out of the egg white with just egg white and ground hazelnuts, you have to put a lot of effort in, let's say it like that. So you have some guaranteed success there. And the cinnamon stars, well, they were my grandma's favorite biscuits, and I would say they are my favorite biscuits. Stories around that. Probably one funny thing is that my grandma liked a lot of meringue topping, so a lot of crunch, and my mother liked it rather thinly spread. So very, whoops, I think my light bulb died on me. Still can see me. Yeah, so my mother had very different ideas from her mother how to make them or how to savor them.
And for your cookbook, whose recipe did you stay truer to, or is it kind of a marriage of the two?
I know it's my mother's idea.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
great. Um,
And other anecdotes, possibly the one we lived in a very small space. Kitchen was tiny, and in order to be able to sit around the table as a family in that kitchen, we had a folding up table, so you could rotate the table plate, just the tabletop, and then unfold it, and then you had a table twice the space. So that would be the configuration for baking. And one day we made Linzer Torte all together, and I poured the kirsch onto the dough, and it ran through the dough right down onto the floor through this. My mother didn't mind.
yeah, that's great. Well, we all have to learn, and baking mishaps are very common, I feel. You mentioned that your biscuit, sorry, I'm American, biscuit recipes are unique in that they don't go stale. Is there any secret to that as far as preparation or ingredients?
I think when you go to a short crust type biscuits, cookies, there's always a little bit of egg in it. But I think it's also the expectation of texture. So we don't expect a biscuit to stay crisp until Christmas. It's okay to get soft. Some people even put an apple into the biscuit tin to make them soft or to keep them a bit moist. Some biscuits have to be chewy inside, whereas the English taste would probably be to have a crisp thing through and through. Yeah.
Another recipe you mentioned was a favorite is the roulade, the beef olive. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that recipe is so special to you?
Yes, it was always my father's task to make that, and we very often had that, I think, on Boxing Day, which is St. Stephen's Day in Germany. And well, he made the roulade, we helped filling them, but it was always him who kind of overlooked the process, so that's a special thing. He's a very good cook, but he didn't cook everything. He loved making stews and these beef roulade or special meat dishes.
Yeah, I saw the roulade was in the section where you outline several holiday menus. And
Yes.
in the book, you mentioned that your family didn't really stick to the typical German holiday menu. Can you talk a little bit about that and why they decided to kind of experiment with different types of recipes?
Yeah, I think it's partly my mother. Um, she had I think only 7 years of school, and part of that was also housework, cooking, sewing, etc. Um, and then she learned a trade as a saleswoman, ran her own shop at the end. Part of that was also cooking, but I'm not sure she enjoyed that too much. So after she married my father, she had to cook for him, as it was the way at that time. And she learned a lot, and I think at some point really started getting curious um, about new things. So she didn't grow up with set meals in her mind.
Hmm.
She never really liked to eat as a kid, so she could ditch family meals with her sisters and parents and pretend to go to the toilet and then get a buttered slice of bread from her grandma downstairs. So I think that's very specific and that stayed. So my father then went fishing, had connections to the local doctor who was a hunter. So we always had a supply um, of game, certain game. We had rabbits. He was fishing, so we had carp and trout, etc. There was always a supply of a choice of really nice food that
Hmm.
could be made into a special meal.
That's great. I love that. Just using what you have and based on what you actually want to eat rather than sticking with the traditional dishes.
Mhm.
So of course it wouldn't be a German Christmas cookbook without a gingerbread recipe, and you have several in your
Yes.
book. So what qualities do you look for? How do you quantify perfect gingerbread?
There are so many types of gingerbread. The one I was striving for in this special gingerbread, soft gingerbread, is Elisen lebkuchen. I'm not sure I'm there with it, but it's very nice anyway. That type of gingerbread is very soft, very much enriched with nuts and fruit, um, always on a wafer because it would be too soft um, otherwise to get it from your baking tray.
Mhm.
Um, it's often covered in a glaze that locks in the flavors as well. And it's just this wonderful, rich Christmas uh, flavor, soft scent, everything, the whole experience in one little bake. Um, the other gingerbread types are quite specific as well. The honey gingerbread is a very traditional one, which is much firmer, but it should be a little bit chewy. And it relies on having a starter sitting around for a few weeks or up to 8 months in some bakeries.
Oh, wow.
It's the one with honey. The starter doesn't really rise up when it matures. It's just the honey and the flowers getting really together, being steeped in the flavors of the honey. So opening the tin with the starter after a couple of weeks, you get much more of the honey scent than you would if you just smelled the jar. of honey. And then there's a gingerbread for constructing gingerbread houses, which I based on a gingerbread recipe from Scandinavia, pepperkuchen. It's ideal because it bakes very hard and it stays crisp. And that's what you want for a gingerbread house, unless the traditional Hansel Gretel, that would be the honey gingerbread, probably with some kind of cardboard structure inside to keep it from collapsing. And then there's another one, which is the gingerbread hearts, which you buy on the Christmas market. And that's also quite a specific one that needs to be, I don't want to say leathery as a quality for food, but it needs to be quite tough and chewy in a way. And it unfolds its flavor while you almost suck on it, while it dissolves in your mouth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Very interesting. In the book, you mentioned that around Christmas time in the weeks leading up to Christmas, there is an abundance of biscuits. Can you tell us a little bit more about this tradition and some of your favorite types of biscuits?
Yeah, you start baking around now, I would say, mid-November. And we always collected those biscuits in a huge tin. So around Christmas, we would have maybe 10 or 15 different kinds of biscuits in that tin. The tin would have various levels of filling, of being filled, because sometimes you would hear steps in going to the bedroom where the tin always was located, and then some crunching and the door closing.
Of
So
course.
people had to try. People had to do quality controls before Christmas. Yeah. Favorite biscuits were the butter biscuits because they are just endless in possibilities for decoration and great fun. And then I mentioned the cinnamon stars, Hilderbrötle, which are these jam-filled biscuits, Linzer biscuits. We liked some pipe biscuits that had also a big amount of marzipan in them because I like the flavor of the biscuits. They never really kept shape very well. It happened quite a few times with our biscuits. Many were experiments. Some just didn't work out for various reasons. In our family, we all really loved the aniseed biscuits, which also have these little feeds. They have to rise from your baking tray. Now I understand they're quite tricky to make. They're quite specific. You can't have baking paper where after the drying process, the biscuits actually stick too much around the edge, so they can't lift off when you bake them. If you use baking powder or bicarbonate of soda, they might not lift off because after a night of letting them dry, their rising power might have gone. So baking ammonia is the rising agent that's ideal for this type of thing. So we tried those. We never had baking ammonia. I'm pretty sure about that because I don't remember the smell. It's very chemical, very kind of drain cleaning thing. But yeah, so favorite biscuits, probably the butter biscuits, cinnamon stars. Cinnamon stars were always easy to make, and the painting, the meringue on top was fun. Always a bit messy.
Yeah, well, messy but delicious. You mentioned people sneaking into the tin to grab some biscuits. Is the purpose of the biscuits to save them for Christmas or for people that come over during the season to entertain or?
They're mostly for Christmas and the time after. So one main purpose of them is actually to give them as gifts. You pack them in little bags or boxes, and they are part of your Christmas gifts to family and friends. But there's this bunter Teller tradition. We didn't call it bunter Teller in our village. It's just a plate with different types of biscuits and oranges and nuts, and whoever comes to visit can pick some.
That's fun. Beyond biscuits, what are some of your favorite recipes from the book to give as gifts?
Um, from the feedback I got so far, the black and white biscuits are certainly very much
Mm.
up there. If you want to do a little bit of biscuit engineering, you can make most wonderful patterns. So last week, I made lots of trombone biscuits, which created quite a
Oh,
stir
fun.
on the internet. Um, and these checkerboard patterns or spirals, it's actually quite easy to make, and they are very, very effective optical, and they have a nice flavor. The hazelnut macaroons, I got very good feedback for them. They're very easy to make. They are an unusual flavor because that type of macaron typically is made with almond flour. Now you can also make it um, with other nut flours or ground nuts, but I got the best walnut flour. You can make them as walnut biscuits, but tradition in our place was to make them with hazelnuts, and the hazelnuts are freshly ground in a drum grinder. That makes them not kind of floury. It makes them more like little curls.
Hmm.
So the oils get released when you bake them, and they're just wonderful.
That sounds so lovely. In the book, are there any recipes that people might look at and think, oh, that seems rather complicated based on the picture that might be easier than they think?
Um, I think the gingerbreads might be easier than you think, apart from the gingerbread house. My publisher asked me for a complicated house, and I delivered one. So there are lots of easy templates for gingerbread houses out there. If you feel daunted by a Black Forest farmhouse, then find something simpler on the internet. You can reduce the amount. The amount given really is good for a farmhouse plus many decorations. Otherwise, I think in this book everything is fairly straightforward.
That's great. It sounds like your publisher asked for a showstopper for your gingerbread house.
We certainly did.
So moving on to Christmas, memories about Christmas. Talk to me about Christmas at your house growing up. What was that like? What are some of your favorite traditions or memories of that time?
So yeah, contrary to the UK, our Christmas trees went up on the 24th in the morning, and the 24th, Christmas Eve, is also the day when we got our presents in the evening. So that's a very German tradition. Um, there's a lot in the preparation. So my grandpa had had the principle of never buying Christmas trees. So there
Hmm.
was a whole period of scouting in the forest where one could cut one without being too obvious.
That's so funny.
Yeah, collecting mosses to build the crib. So my grandpa again had um, they lived in this old converted farmhouse and had lots of stuff, tools, etc. upstairs, and huge boxes of Christmas decorations. Lots of lambs made out of real lamb's wool and um, carved wooden legs. Many lambs just with three legs because um, some fell off over time. I think they must have come from the war before that, Christmas baubles, etc. So the whole preparation was finding a tree, finding mosses. He had this table, which then got a little fence made around with wood. My grandma cut nice bunting out of Christmas gift paper. And then Christmas scenes were modeled on this table with a Christmas tree in the center.
Hmm.
So real landscaping with probably 3 or 4 sets of the kings walking around and five little Jesus in several stables, etc. It was great fun.
Yeah, and the last time we talked, you mentioned that your love for baking sort of began at your parents' house, helping your mom in the kitchen, especially during the Christmas season. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I mentioned this small kitchen, and that kitchen was really the center of our life. Um, when I was very little, our flat was still heated with wood stove, so kitchen was really the only warm place throughout the day. Um, Baking happened there. My mother didn't mind my brother and us joining in. She left her job for us to be always around. So it was very natural to join in cooking and baking and those activities. It didn't feel unusual to me, but seeing it now, it was a very unusual upbringing, I think.
Well, it definitely helped, I'm sure, spur that love of baking and your success in Bake Off. So I think time well spent. From the book, it seems like Christmas was a very busy time for you. You were an altar boy and you were also in the town band. You mind sharing with people listening in a little bit about that in case they haven't read the book yet?
Yeah, sure. As an altar boy at that time, Christmas was really the busiest time. There was the Mass on Christmas Eve night, traditionally at midnight, but as the church got a bit more modern, it came down to 10 o'clock or even 8 o'clock. So for that service, the church was full, probably with 800 people or so, and about 15, 18 altar boys, some just holding candles along the middle aisle, and others having frankincense, etc., etc. So I was part of that, which meant that the timing for our Christmas celebrations had to be adjusted to the schedule of my altar services. So that could be on Christmas Day itself as well, at a 9 o'clock service or 11 o'clock service. You wouldn't do both; you would do one of them. And
Hmm.
on Boxing Day there were services again. So a lot of that around the church, and my family went along with it. I have heard rumors that they weren't always too happy, but um, it was okay. And then on top of that, the brass band. Once I started playing in the brass band, my father played as well. Um, Traditionally, the big concert of the year was on Boxing Day evening, together with the male choir. And every other year, it was the brass band setting up the the PE hall of the local school for about 500 people, and then um, obviously a lot of rehearsing, playing the concert, and then on the 27th morning, everyone would meet again and take the tables down, take the stage down, etc.
Very cool. Do you still play or?
Not in the brass band. They were actually here for my father's birthday, but I do play. Next week I'll be in Luxembourg playing some Christmas carols with friends and selling some of my books, hopefully.
Oh, very fun. As far as favorite holiday traditions, you mentioned a couple from your memories as a child. Are there any that you continue with your family today or any new traditions?
Um, well, the time is more complicated somehow living abroad. My brother lives in Switzerland, so we are around here in Freiburg. I'm currently with my parents. Um, we are in Freiburg on Christmas if we can manage that. Um, my in-laws lived in Florida, so we spent some winter, some Christmas time in Florida, which is wonderful. Um, but it was too individual. Each year was too individual for um, in order to create a tradition. The
Sure.
tradition might be to have nice walks in the forest here with my family.
That's nice. That's funny. I actually live in Florida, and can attest that it's nice to have a warm, not ever a white Christmas, but it's nice to have some sunshine in December.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that it changes year per year depending on who you're with or where you're traveling to, but are there any dishes that you would say your Christmas isn't complete without, or that you try to have every year?
I think it's the Linzer Torte, which my
Okay.
mother introduced as this Christmas cake. Um, it keeps for a very long time. It improves very well. In the first book, I've got her traditional Linzer Torte recipe, which uses kirsch. For the Christmas book, I changed that a little bit, using amaretto as the alcohol and a different jam. And it's interesting how this different alcohol creates really a different experience. So with the traditional Linzer Torte, you put kirsch in. Kirsch is expensive. And if you eat it right after baking, you don't get any sense that there was any alcohol in it or any kirsch, any fragrant substance. If you leave it for 2 weeks or longer, suddenly this flavor pops out.
Mm,
And I would think this cake is, for me, one of the essential Christmas things.
that's lovely. I don't know if you've decided yet. We're still a month out from Christmas, but do you know what's going to be on your Christmas menu this year as far as dishes or biscuits?
Um, we'll be here. My parents are both in the 90s, so we'll see what will
Hmm.
be appropriate.
Well, that'll be nice getting to spend some extra time with
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Okay, moving into my last section of questions, and just a reminder that anyone here, if you have any questions you'd like me to ask Jürgen, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. So we are 4 years out from your appearance on Bake Off. I know I asked you this last time we chatted, but what are the biggest ways that your life has changed? Are there any lessons from Bake Off that you still carry with you today?
Certainly, time management is a big thing that's important on Bake Off, and I think it helped me manage my time better under
Hmm.
pressure. Um, Recipe development or being creative in baking, that's also one thing Bake Off taught me. Um, as a baker before Bake Off, I was very much following recipes. I wasn't so creative with flavors, but having to design a huge variation of bakes that are not following existing paths um, really got me thinking about ingredients and made me a much more creative baker.
Hmm. As far as I'm not sure if you're allowed to share this, but as far as timeline for Bake Off, how much time did you have to develop each of the recipes, or did you kind of have to have all of them ready before the show started filming?
Because we were filming in a bubble, we didn't have a chance to get out of the hotel grounds. Um, and we had a very tight schedule. So it was 2 days in a test kitchen where we could familiarize us again with the recipes we developed before, and then 2 days filming. So in 4 days, you went through one episode, essentially.
Hmm.
Um, because of that, there wouldn't be any time really to do recipe development, to source ingredients you're not sure about, etc., because everything had to be uh, purchased by people outside and then got across the border. It was a huge process. So they gave us the briefs for all recipes up to semifinals. And for each pair of recipes, showstopper and signature, we had 1 week. So in the ninth week, before going in the tent, we designed showstopper and signature one. In the eighth week, we designed showstopper signature two, etc.
Hmm.
So everyone in that tent at the beginning had recipes at the ready for up to the semifinals.
Wow. And I mean, obviously you sourced some recipe inspiration from your childhood. What were some other sources of inspiration when developing your recipes for the show?
Um, the most interesting one came out of the blue, I would say. Um, the source of inspiration were walks with my wife. And it typically took 3 days to get a sense of the recipe of that week or recipes of that week. So 3 days walking around during COVID time, remember, in the hills behind Brighton to get an idea what I want to make. And that left 4 days for actually making it twice, hopefully, and writing up the recipe while still doing a little bit of day job.
Mm.
So it was very tight, very intense. But in terms of the actual process, the actual recipes, bakes, huge help with Bo Friedberg's professional pastry chef books, because I think they are wonderful. There are a lot of critics that find his pastry books old-fashioned, but everything in there works, and he gives ideas how to amend that, how to change that into something else. It's a wonderful work with a huge wisdom behind it about food. That was probably my main inspiration in terms of process.
Okay, great. And did you have a favorite type of challenge? Did you like the signatures best, the technicals, the showstoppers, or did it depend on what you were making that week?
I did like the technical ones. I did enjoy those. In terms of the other ones, it really depended on the brief. So the idea for the very first showstopper, this lamp cake,
Mhm.
I don't know where it came from. My wife was a bit flabbergasted when I said I'll make a lamp. Um, and the flavors in that cake, I made that cake a few times since, and it always has amazing feedback.
That's great. Is there, maybe it's the lamb cake, but was there a bake that you're most proud of that you did across the course of the show?
I still would say it's the showstopper in the semifinals. I
Yeah.
know I got thrown out in the semifinals, but I thought that it's the most unique one in terms of cultural integrity. So Tory Gate in the sea with little wooden boats around, and these entremets where matcha is the dominant flavor.
Hmm.
I thought that was a thing of beauty. Also, I thought the subtlety pays tribute to Japanese precision, if you want, in baking.
Yeah,
But of
those.
course, not everyone gets that.
It was a good, yeah, I'll never forget that episode. Yeah, lots of people were shocked by the outcome, but it was such a joy watching you bake across the whole season. Did you have a favorite week as far as theme? Was it exciting for you to have the bread week, or did you feel more pressure because people expected you to do well?
Um, Bread week, certainly people expected me, and German week was the worst one. I can answer that very
Sure.
easily. Um, they had this idea of German week before actually applications opened, so it wasn't for me that they designed German week. They all had Louisa Weiss's book under their arm, walking around the grounds. So Louisa Weiss's wisdom was their wisdom about German baking, seen through a very British filter, and I couldn't quite adjust always to the cultural differences. Now I would know what they wanted, but I couldn't rid myself of my more German views back then.
Hmm.
Favorite, yeah, I think again the semifinals, the subtlety that an opera cake offered and an entremet sculpture offered was great.
Sure. Great. So, in watching the show, obviously it's a baking show, but it's also kind of a reality TV show. You're under a time crunch and you kind of only have one chance for things to go well. Was it stressful for you at all filming the show, or were you just kind of excited to be doing something that you love?
Yeah, the filming was less stressful in a way than the recipe development phase. I found the development phase was more pressure and the filming was more release,
Sure.
but it was very emotional,
Definitely.
surprisingly emotional.
Well, you're spending all your time there, and especially since you're filming during the pandemic, you really were
Yeah,
with this group for a couple weeks.
yeah. And you think I was there for 5.5 weeks. So you think about nothing but baking for 5.5 weeks. Adrenaline gets built up. By week 7 or 8, we all thought we need some more savory bakes.
For sure. For sure. Are there any tidbits about filming the show you're able to share that viewers might be surprised to learn?
Yeah, you see this tent, which is always kind of empty, but there are always at least 30 production stuff around.
Oh, wow.
It's a very busy place.
Hmm.
And you don't know when you have a camera on you. They all have these huge telelenses. And they can zoom in onto your hands from the other side of the room. As soon as you have a camera on you, your sound is on. So I was very, very aware of that. If you have some brown log-shaped thing on your desk, you can see how suddenly all cameras start focusing on that. It's an amazing machine to watch as well as being part of it.
For sure. Yeah, it's a great show. So talk to me about what you've been up to since being on the show. Obviously, you've written 2 cookbooks. Any other projects you want to talk about?
There have been many doors opening. Not sure where many of them will lead, but some of the high points certainly was talking in front of physicists at Oxford University. In Oxford, there was Nicholas Curti, a refugee from Hungary, who established low temperature physics in Britain, and Britain as a leading country in that science. But he was also interested in cooking. So he took cooking to the Royal Institution and Royal Society. And one of his taglines is, "We know everything about the temperatures on the moon, but we don't know about the temperatures of our soufflés." So yeah, and he did TV demonstrations in the 70s. So they asked me to have the honor to talk in front of them in a series to revive this connection, which is very nice.
Yeah, for sure. I think also the last time we talked, you mentioned that you were doing some bread workshops. Is that something you're still doing?
Yeah, I'm doing workshops at a local bakery. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see the announcements. We're currently planning more workshops for the new year. Some mixture of pretzel and dry bread, and maybe some Black Forest beer tasting.
That's fun. How big are the classes usually?
The maximum is 13.
Okay. A
That's
baker's dozen, of course.
Yeah.
I asked you this last time, and I'm curious if your answer is different. Do you have any aspirations to open a bakery one day or sell your baked goods?
No, not yet. I am kind of thinking about it and then not thinking about it. It's pretty hard, I think, and Brighton has a lot of good bakeries. So I would have to think about my niche. Maybe I should start thinking about my niche. But I can see, I think I gave that answer before, I can see that I very quickly would be put into a managerial role rather than manipulating dough. And there is a critical size for these small businesses to make enough so that you can live on them properly. And it's hard to get through that critical size. If you are a small business selling from home, you have some flexibility up to a point. And then there's a huge void where you as a business are very hard. It's very hard to exist. And then suddenly when you sell 1,000 loaves a night or maybe 10,000 loaves a night, then you are where life gets comfortable again.
For sure. Well, if you ever decide to do a pop-up, I think there are lots of people out there that would love to try your bread and your Black Forest cake and all those great things. We have a question from the audience. Chris wants to know if you're tempted to launch your own cookery show in Germany.
Well, I would love to, but it appears in Germany I don't have a face. People don't know about me. After I was on Bake Off, ARD wanted to have me for an interview, and then they couldn't because Das große Backen is on Sat.1, which is a commercial channel, and ARD are a state channel like the BBC, and they weren't allowed to, via interviewing me, advertise the baking show on a private channel. So I really never got publicity in Germany other than very regionally in Freiburg. And I was at a bookshop today and saw they had my first book in German translation on the shelves, and I asked them if it sells, and they were very, I'm sorry, not really.
Oh, that's too bad.
Well, to be expected, I
Yeah.
suppose.
So I'm sure you get this question a lot, but I have to ask, what is next? Another cookbook or yeah, I was wondering if you had any plans for the immediate future or future.
I'm putting all energy into selling my second book at the moment, and I don't have huge plans for after Christmas. I need to find another day job, whatever that might be. I would love to do more with people rather than sitting in front of a screen and do programming. Although I still feel like a techie, I do love getting geeky things and getting programs going, etc. Certainly, artificial intelligence has aspects that fascinate me, but I'm in a position where I will need to find another day job, and I'm not sure what that could be, what that will look like.
All right. Well, if there are no further questions from the audience, those are all of my questions. Jürgen, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to chat with you. Congratulations on the beautiful book. I can't wait to be making some of these. I just got invited to a cookie swap or biscuit swap party, and I'm definitely going to be picking out one of the recipes from your book to bring. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much to you both. That was very interesting. Please, everyone in the audience, buy Jürgen's book if you like what they spoke about. And yeah, our next event from the British German Association is actually our Carols and Readings, a Christmas party where we will also have some Christmas biscuits, though they are not home baked. But I hope to see some of you there. And yeah, thank you so much to both of you, Abigail and Jürgen. I hope to see you soon. All the best to you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.